I am finally doing my October wrap up now that we are at the end of November, but it has just been that kind of a month for me. So I'm just going to get into it. First off, I did finish my reading goal for the year in October, so that was very, very good, but then that put me into a little bit of a reading slump in November because I felt like I had no reason to read. Plus, there's been a lot going on at work, so I can't blame everything on completing my reading goal. And that would just mean that I was being kind of lazy about my reading, which maybe I was. Anyway, I read 8 books in October, which is a really good month for me. And it's actually the most books that I have read in a single month so far this year. And I don't think there's any way November is going to pass it at this point, even though I am taking the last week of the month off from work. But I have a lot planned because Ariana is going to be home again, which probably means more book buying, shopping and buying than book reading. Plus, I'm going down to Los Angeles to pick her up and bring her back, so not as much time, but I am flying down and then we're driving back. Anyway, whatever. Let's get into it. What did I read in October? First off, I listened to the audiobook Choose Me by Tess Gerritsen. I do not give ratings to the audiobooks I listen to, primarily because I listen to them in the car and I tend to miss stuff because I'm focusing on driving. And so I can't really hold it against the book when maybe I missed an important plot point and it's not the author's fault, or something isn't making sense for me, or I can't really judge if something is well written because somebody is reading it to me and I'm not seeing the words on the page, which I need to do to be able to really judge something. So I will just say that this was pretty predictable. It was really a police procedural. It was definitely not a thriller. So I would put it in purely in the mystery genre, and then I think in police procedural, because we are trying to figure out, along with 2 detectives, solving the case of what has happened to the apparent suicide of a college student. And one of the detectives just doesn't think it's adding up to suicide. So she wants to take it on and see the case through. We're also given alternating timelines of the story told from multiple points of view. I don't know, I haven't looked into it enough because I haven't really cared enough, but I'm assuming that Gerritsen wrote the chapters that are told from perhaps the female detective's point of view, and the male author wrote the chapters that are told from the male professor, college professor's point of view. But that is maybe a bad assumption on my part, and maybe I shouldn't make that assumption. It definitely felt a little disjointed, jumping back and forth in time and jumping back and forth from viewpoint. And like I mentioned already, it was really predictable. I honestly don't think I've ever read anything by Gerritsen before. I realized that I had a really easy way to confirm that. And no, I had never read anything by Gerritsen before. Don't know that I would be anxious to pick up anything yet again. Next thing I read was S.A. Cosby, All the Sinners Bleed. I'd heard so many amazing things about this. I know that everybody's buzzing about the Goodreads nominations that have just come out. This was on the list last year. I would definitely say read the trigger warnings before you pick this up. It's pretty intense. Cosby is an amazing writer. However, I gave this only 3.5 stars. One of the tropes I really dislike in mysteries, especially thrillers especially, is when the protagonist has some deep, dark secret from their past that could change everything, or they don't want anybody to know. And it's always hinted at, or there's some clue that they're aware of, but it could have ramifications for themselves, and so they don't want anybody to know, and it's hinted at, and we, the reader, who are along for the ride and inside this person's brain, are not getting what that thing is. Now, we're hearing their thoughts, and in my thoughts, I'm thinking of that thing if I have the secret, and I'm not stopping myself and thinking of my secret. I'm thinking of the thing. So it is not playing fair, and so I feel like it is basically breaking the rules of detection by not playing fair with us. And then it always is some secret that is no big deal. And so it's this it's this letdown, and maybe it's done in the name of a red herring, but it's always so anticlimactic. And maybe someday it won't be, but I can't think of a time in recent history where this trope has been used and it hasn't been anticlimactic. So why are you doing it? And that was here. Our protagonist, Titus Crown, has returned to his small hometown in Virginia to become the sheriff after leaving the FBI under some cloud. Now, I will say, it is a pretty intense thing when we do find out the secret. However, does it really matter to what is going on here or to his character development? I don't know. Was it worth all of the angst of my terrible secret? And if people find out, they won't want me to be sheriff, or they'll take away my job as sheriff, or everything that led up to it. I'm just not sure. There were a few things also in this book that were just too convenient. Something happens, and then 4 chapters later, you just see the handwriting on the wall. This is going to be important, so pay attention, kids. And that's exactly what happens. I also did think that the story drug in the middle. It wasn't that long of a book, and the story still drug in the middle. It took longer to resolve than it needed to, and I think we have a good idea who the villain is, for lack of a better term, about halfway through the book. And then it just becomes this case of how are we going to catch him? Again, this is a police procedural. This is a sheriff and his department trying to catch someone who has done heinous crimes, but it wants to be a thriller. And I think that's also part of the confusion. I'm not saying that you can't have police or sheriff characters in a thriller. However, this really did read as an investigation, a police procedural. However, there's a showdown. And I think a lot of police procedurals do have a showdown. But when people are calling this a thriller, I think it's detective fiction, not really police procedural, not really detective, because I always think of detective fiction as private investigator fiction. It's just my description of it, my categorization of it. To me, it's definitely not a thriller. It was too slow moving to be a thriller. 3.5 stars. Next thing was another audio, and it's actually very unusual for me to listen to 2 audios in a month. Usually I am not in the car enough to make it through 2 audios, and I'm not really sure what I was doing at the beginning of the month to make it through 2. I must have started Choose Me in September and finished it really early in October, because I also made it through Not a Sound really, really quickly. Not a Sound was the first Heather Gudenkauf that I've listened to. I really enjoyed it. It was not as scary as I thought it was going to be. When I read the synopsis of it, I really thought it was going to freak me out. Not a Sound is about a former nurse who has been left deaf after an accident when she was hit by a car. And she has decided to live in her family's cabin in the woods that she has inherited. She is going through a separation divorce from her doctor husband, because the way that she dealt with the loss of her hearing after the divorce was to become an alcoholic. And her husband did not feel that she was providing, being a great role model or mother to her stepdaughter, her young stepdaughter. So he asked her to leave. And she is getting her life back on track. She has gotten herself sober. She's attending meetings, and she is working to improve her sign language, her lip reading. She has a guide dog, and she's trying to get a job because she obviously can't go back to emergency room nursing, which she was doing before. And she needs to work. She needs money to live. And so she has applied for a job working in a doctor's office, but she's worried that her estranged husband is going to blackball her in the medical community in their town because of what she's done. She is an outdoors person. She is about to go for her job interview, but she decides to go kayaking the morning of the interview, and while she is out on the river, she finds the body of one of her former co-workers along the banks of the river. And she is delayed from her job interview, obviously, while she waits for the police. One of her best friends from childhood is a detective, and he also can communicate with her. He has learned sign language as part of his role in the department, and so she depends on him quite a bit. She also has feelings for him, but she is conflicted because she still has feelings more for her old life than for her estranged husband, is the way that I read it. And I think more for her stepdaughter than for her estranged husband. But she would go back if her estranged husband asked her to, I think more to parent her stepdaughter than to be with him. What happens next is her wanting to uncover what happened, her realizing that this coworker was trying to get in touch with her and potentially had news or had information that she was trying to pass along to our female protagonist, which she realizes may have been why this happened. And she begins to wonder if she too is in danger. And as things start to happen with feeling like someone is watching her in the woods and someone has broken into her cabin, etc., makes her and her friend, the police detective, start to implement things to protect her. However, she can't hear and has to rely upon her guide dog to alert her to odd goings on. So when I read the concept in the synopsis, I thought, this is going to be terrifying, being alone in the woods with a dog and not being able to hear. Sometimes these guys bark for the weirdest reasons at the weirdest times, and it freaks me out. So living in this situation and being freaked out by dogs barking and it being really, really dark outside and not knowing what they're barking at, this was a little too close to home for me. However, it was not as scary as I thought it was going to be. It was a good read, listen though. I did enjoy it. Definitely enjoyed it more than the other audio, the Tess Gerritsen. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, and I thought it was the first Heather Goodenkoff that I had read. I think I said that a few minutes ago. And then I keep forgetting that Heather Goodenkoff wrote Everyone is Watching, which is a thriller that I did not enjoy this summer. It was the one about the reality TV show that just missed the mark for me. So this one I enjoyed much better. All right, next up is The Return of Ellie Black by Emiko Jean, which is nominated in this year's Goodreads Awards. This is about the reappearance of Ellie Black, the return of Ellie Black, obviously, after she has been missing for, I think, a year. Two years. Ellie has been missing for 2 years. Her case has been investigated by Chelsea Calhoun. Chelsea, ironically, or not so ironically, had a sister who disappeared 20 years ago and then was discovered murdered by her boyfriend, who she snuck out of the house to meet. They have no idea what happened to Ellie. They do know that she was hosting a paid party situation for high school students. So she had rented with a friend a room in a cheap motel and bought a bunch of alcohol and was waiting for people to show up and pay to get in to make some money. She wanted to buy a new cell phone. Her parents wouldn't buy it for her, and she thought this would be the best way to get it. She needed to use the bathroom. There were people in the bathroom at the party, and so she decided to go out to a nearby gas station to go to the bathroom, and she never came back. There were no CCTV on any of the buildings around, and she simply just disappeared, and there's no trace of her. Chelsea Calhoun is also the daughter of the previous police chief, and so there's a little bit of history and shoes to fill that she has to live up to. And so she's dealing with that at the same time as feeling something of a failure that she has not been able to figure out what happened to Ellie. So when Ellie suddenly returns out of the blue and is discovered on a hiking trail, Chelsea feels like she's been given this chance to redeem herself by getting whoever did this, and she can also, in a way, redeem herself, and not redeem herself, but get, in a way, the person who took her sister away from her. Now, she was just a child when her sister was taken away from her, and the boyfriend also died. However, she needs this for closure, in a way. And so they take Ellie into the hospital. They want to question her, but she will not answer any questions. She does not want to talk about where she's been, who was holding her, and what has happened. So they have nothing to go on still. She goes home with her parents, and she won't talk to them either. She, however, has definitely been traumatized, and they do not know how to help her. She eventually agrees to talk to a therapist who is trying to help her, but at the same time, Chelsea is still trying to unravel the clues of what has been going on. And with the help of Ellie's boyfriend and Ellie's sister and some other people, she is eventually able to figure it out. Now, we do get a little bit of back and forth because we are following from Chelsea's point of view what is happening now as she's trying to unravel the case after Ellie's reappearance. We're also going back in time and living with Ellie as she is living through her initial capture. Again, read the trigger warnings if this is going to be too much for you. It is harrowing, but it is done in a really thoughtful way. It is not sensationalized at all. I gave it a 4. I thought, again, it was, really well written. It was done very thoughtfully. Coming right on the heels of All the Sinners Bleed and Titus's, oh no, I have a secret that everyone might find out. This too starts with Chelsea having a secret, but it is really just her remembrances of her sister and what happened to her sister, and that all comes pouring out quickly, so it really isn't a secret. I think the reason that a lot of people really liked this book and felt that it was commendable this year was because it has a little bit of a different twist. There's something in it that you wouldn't expect. And yet I found it, again, predictable. Figured out pretty quickly what was going on. And if you're going to throw a twist, I would like it not to be a predictable twist. So it just couldn't be a 5-star for me for that reason, because it didn't wow me from the perspective of, oh my gosh, that was earth-shattering or mind-blowing. Maybe it was for some people, and that's why they think it was really great. But for me, not so much. Next, I read Shari Lapena's What Have You Done? I am trying to catch up on all of my Once Upon a Book Club books that I have really let stack up, although this was one of the October Halloween books, so not one of my older ones, but reading one of the newer ones prevents it from stacking up. I talked about this quite a bit in my last weekly vlog, and I raved about it. I ended up saying that I think I liked it more than Everyone Here Is Lying, and I did give it a 4.5, which was basically around the same rating that I gave Everyone Here Is Lying. I like La Pena more than your average reader. If you go by Goodreads ratings, those two books have 3.8s on Goodreads, and I'm giving it a 4.5. I think that one of the things that stands out for me about this book is what it's like to be a young woman in high school and what you have to go through. So we open with a bang with the body of Diana Brewer being found in a field the morning after she has been killed. And we are there with her because she is a ghost. And I think a lot of people don't like that concept because they found it a little hokey. We are introduced to several characters who could be the person who is responsible. We're also introduced to her mom and shown how she handles or does not handle what happened. We're introduced to Diana's two best friends, her boyfriend, who definitely has secrets that he's keeping about their relationship. We are introduced to her track coach, who definitely has secrets about their relationship. We are introduced to her co-workers at the Home Depot who lead the police to a customer who has been harassing Diana. And this is the thing, she's a young high school senior who is intelligent, who is athletic, who has everything in front of her, who can go to a good college on both an academic and an athletic scholarship. And she's beautiful, she's smart, she looks perfect on paper, yet she's being harassed at work, and she has a boyfriend who is putting her through things that he should not be putting her through. And she really has no one taking care of her or advocating for her. And everywhere she turns, people are trying to take advantage of her. And I think that it's just a really good example in November of 2024 as a reminder of what young women go through on a daily basis. And it's just part of their lives. And unfortunately, this character lost her life. There are some aspects of this that remind me of a book from a few years ago, but if I mention that book, I think it will be a spoiler. So I will just say it did have aspects of it that were not that original, which I'm now second guessing my high 4.5. But sometimes I just need a read that is a really good, fast read to get through. It's enjoyable. It doesn't have to be, I don't have to learn anything from it. You should probably learn some things though, right? I know. What do you want? You want attention? It's just a good time. And this was a good time, which is weird to say about a mystery, but it was. Another book that was in my last reading vlog, not my last reading vlog, probably the reading vlog that I will put a link to. Little Creeping Things by Chelsea Achasso, which I gave a 2.5. I did not enjoy this. It is young adult. It is also set in a high school, and I will just say that it was very confusing. It was very meandering. The characters were very confusing to me. I lost the plot several times. I had to go back and reread sections several times. I would read it, I would put it down, I would not know what happened. I would go back and have to wait and then go back and reread things, and then I would get it the second time. I thought maybe it was me. I hadn't read a young adult for a while. I thought maybe young adult didn't work for me anymore. I will say that I have since read another young adult and did not have this problem. So I think it's just the writing style, and I think I will probably stay away from her writing moving forward, and that is all I will say about that. This is one of my old Once Upon a Book Clubs that I did make it through, and it is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. I read Once More Upon a Time by Chokshi in September, which was a very short read, which was not really a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses. It was a continuation, taking one of the princesses and talking about what happens to one of them next. It was interesting conceptually, and I enjoyed it. This was, I had thought, going to be more of a fantasy based upon that, and it really was not. I really don't know how I would characterize this. I don't know, maybe magical realism? Not really sure. The synopsis says it is a sumptuous, Gothic-infused story about a marriage that is unraveled by dark secrets, a friendship cursed to end in tragedy, and the danger of believing in fairy tales. The breathtaking adult debut from New York Times bestselling author Roshani Chokshi. This is, again, dual timelines from dual points of view. And one of them is a high school girl. I just did not realize I read so many points of view of high school girls in October. I don't know how that happened, but it did. So we are introduced to our protagonist at the very beginning, and he meets and marries Indigo, who is a very wealthy woman, and she is rather odd, however. And she makes a deal with him that he can never ask her about her past. He is allowed to know that she is an orphan, she was raised by her aunt, etc., but he's not allowed to ask her any questions. She can offer information, but he can't ask her anything. he agrees, and they're living their best lives together. And then they receive word that her aunt is dying and is asking for her to return to the family home. They return to the family home, which he finds is just basically falling down around the aunt. And servants are caring for her, but they've been instructed not to care for the house. And he's very, very confused that his wife would be handling things in this way. We're then taken into the narrative back when Indigo was in high school, but it's the narrative of her best friend, Azure, who is from the wrong side of the tracks and whose stepfather, I don't know if her mother ever marries this person, mother's boyfriend, stepfather, is potentially abusive, and she is befriended by Indigo, and she basically ends up living in the house with Indigo and her aunt to stay away from this potentially abusive situation. And the problem is that Indigo is very, very controlling of Azure, and so Indigo moves from one potentially abusive situation into a different kind of an abusive situation. So we are learning things about Indigo from Azure's perspective and narrative, which, as we return to her husband's narrative, we are beginning to like her less and less. I did give it a 4. I do think that Chakshi is an amazing writer. I think she does write very, very lyrically. I think that her writing is very, very evocative, and it is very gothic, and so she sets a scene amazingly. I think one of the things that made me rate it down was, just as much as I hate the, oh my gosh, I have a secret, I hope nobody finds out what my secret is. But I'm not going to say what my secret is because I know my reader is listening in on my thoughts. Also the, oh, but if I had only known then what I know now, also drives me crazy. And our male protagonist must allude to that concept I don't know how many times. Oh, if I had only known. That got a little old. There were some continuity issues which always sort of throw me out of the story. That was there. I don't know, maybe I just read too much, but all of these, there's going to be some dramatic unveiling, and you're going to be shocked and surprised. It's just never that shocking. You can kind of see it from a mile away. So, and finally, my highest ranked book of the month was How to Age Disgracefully by Claire Pooley, which, tell you right off the bat, I gave a 4.8, so almost a 5.0. So almost a 5, but I still had a few nits to pick. This is the story of Daphne, who has been living in self-imposed isolation in London for many years. And on the eve of her 70th birthday, she decides that she needs to make a change. She needs to get some people in her life so that she does not die alone. And so she decides to join a senior citizens center to meet some people. She decides to join an online dating for seniors program. She decides to offer herself up to do some babysitting. She's really putting herself out there in all of these different ways. At the same time, we also meet Art. Art is a failed actor who is estranged from his daughter, his adult daughter. And he's having a tough time because he is broke. And he's trying to figure out a way to make some money. And then we are also introduced to the other cast of characters of the seniors that are also in this senior citizen center, as well as Lydia, who runs the program at the center and who is married to a man who is perhaps cheating on her. She also is a new empty nester. Both her daughters are now away at college, university, and she doesn't really know what to do with herself. So she's taken this job at the senior center, directing the program. And she's desperately unhappy because her husband is not treating her very well. She knows deep down that he's straying, but she doesn't want to believe it. And she's trying to figure out what she should do. But she also doesn't have anybody in her life. So all of these people come together, and also on the other side of the community center where the seniors meet, there is a daycare program. So we also meet Ziggy. Now, ironically, all of these high school girls, now we have a high school boy. Ziggy is in his last year of high school, and he is a teenage dad. And a little bit of a shakeup when his girlfriend got pregnant and did not want to keep the baby. His mother advised him that he was going to keep the baby. Ziggy is very skilled in computers, and he wants to go to college and study computer science and make a better life for himself and his daughter. However, he lives in a very tough neighborhood. The other thing to know about Daphne is Daphne has some secrets. For whatever reason, although I have been going on and on about how much I dislike when people have secrets and don't let us know their secrets, Daphne repeatedly tells us she has secrets, and she doesn't say what they are, and I'm okay with it in this book. Maybe because it's comedic, maybe because she's not woe is me, it's more lighthearted, it's not dramatic, desperate police officers with dramatic secrets. She has skills that you would not expect a 70-year-old woman to have. So, yeah. So is it really a secret? We know that she's got something going on from her past. It is amusing. It is found family. Every one of the characters has a conflict that the others have to help them out with. And usually it's Daphne at the center of helping them. But everybody gets a little bit involved with all of the solutions. And at the end, everyone is really pulling together to come to the aid of each other. I don't really know how I would categorize this book, but it is a good, fun read, and I enjoyed it, and it was my favorite book that I read this month. So, oh, and there's a dog. who plays a key role and is a very important character. So those are the 8 books I read in October. I never filmed my November to be read. I think I will do a combined November, December to be read for the channel, because since I'm not really caught up on my November to be read, it's going to roll into the December to be read and make December probably completely unrealistic. So we'll take a shot at that. I hope that you had a great reading month in October and are having a great reading month in November, better than me. And let me know if you have set a reading goal for 2024 and if you've met it yet. So tell your pets I said hi, and I'll see you next time.